Hey everybody, John Van Fleet here, Technical Services Leader for Plews and Edelmann. Today we have a quick tech tip for you regarding all your electronic rack and pinion repairs. Here at Plews and Edelmann, we're always looking for ways to save our customers time and money. We've recently identified a common failure mode in electric rack and pinions involving the electric rack and pinion drive belt. There's a rubber belt inside the rack and pinion housing that will oftentimes wear out after years of wear and tear. This failure typically requires the entire rack and pinion to be replaced, resulting in large repair bills coupled with the inability of certain shops to do it due to it being required that you reflash the PCM. Our repair will not require a reflashing of the PCM, and if done correctly, you can avoid having to perform an alignment once the repair is done. In order to determine if your rack and pinion is eligible for repair using our EPS drive belt kits, we're going to need to inspect the belt. To start, you're going to go ahead and remove the inner tie rod end from the rack and pinion. We've left the outer tie rod end attached to our inner tie rod end following removal. This is to show that no alignment should be necessary following this procedure. In addition to removing the inner tie rod end, you'll also need to make an alignment mark on your input shaft, remove all electrical connectors from the motor, and then remove any bolts that are holding the belt housing together to the main rack and pinion body. The inner tie rod end that will be removed will be the tie rod end that is closest to the belt housing. We're going to start by making an alignment mark on our input shaft. This alignment mark is going to run all the way down the input shaft, over any rubber boots that may be there, and then onto the rack housing. This alignment mark should be made so that you know exactly how many turns you've made and which direction it needs to go back in before reinstalling back into your vehicle. So go ahead and make your mark and run all the way down over any rubber boots you may or may not have and up the rack housing. Again, just keep an eye on where that's at throughout this process, okay? Next, we're gonna move over to our rack and pinion motor, and we're gonna disconnect any electrical connectors. Now, most of the time, the two other connectors that are there will be disconnected already if you've already removed it from the vehicle like we have here. Go ahead and disconnect the electrical connector from your motor. And next, we're going to go ahead and remove, in this circumstance, the 6 bolts that connect the belt housing to the cover. For this rack and pinion, we need to turn the input shaft to allow the bearing to separate itself from the rack and pinion housing. This will not be the case for all rack and pinions. Some of them, you'll simply remove the bolts that hold the housing cover on, and the housing cover will come right off, and you'll be able to inspect your belt and determine whether or not that was the fail mode. This one's a little more in depth than most, but we wanted to make sure we showed you just how easy it was, even on the most difficult rack and pinions. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to give this one a full turn all the way, marking our alignment mark as we go, and we know that we gave it 1 turn to open it up so that we can inspect that belt. And now, we have our belt exposed to us. And we can see in about 5 minutes, we've been able to ascertain whether or not we're going to need to replace the entire rack and pinion, or if we could potentially get away with just replacing the rack and pinion drive belt. I can see right off the bat that a piece of the drive belt that drives the rack and pinion bearing has been torn off. And it looks like we've got quite a few teeth missing from the belt. This is the common failure that we most often see on these drive belts. This belt and this rack and pinion would be a perfect candidate for a belt replacement. Again, we could replace this belt, get this rack and pinion back on the road without requiring any reflashing of the PCM and potentially saving the customer from even having to do an alignment. If you have any further questions or you want to follow along the next steps, you can see our instruction videos that are included with every drive belt replacement kit we offer. I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you found this tech tip helpful. It's John Van Fleet, Technical Services Leader for Plews and Edelmann.